Welcome back to our Lahore studios. It's me, Hamza Amjad, and let's begin the bulletin with Iran, which says it will exceed its uranium enrichment limits under the 2015 nuclear deal on Monday. This comes as Tehran's deadline for world powers to save the nuclear pact ended today. Iran's chief nuclear negotiator, Abbas Araqchi, says Tehran wanted to salvage the deal, but Europe did not fulfill its obligations. He says Iran will keep reducing its commitments every 60 days unless signatories take action to protect it from US sanctions. Now, Araqchi says Tehran will enrich uranium based on its needs, but the doors of diplomacy are still open. Meanwhile, Britain, France and Germany have urged to reverse its decision. Meanwhile, Iran says its oil tanker seized by Britain in the Strait of Gibraltar was not heading to Syria. Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araqchi says the seizure of the ship was maritime robbery. Take a look.
Iran says its oil tanker seized by Britain in the Strait of Gibraltar was not heading to Syria. Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araqchi says the seizure of the ship was maritime robbery. British Royal Marine seized the oil tanker for allegedly bringing oil to Syria in violation of EU sanctions. But Araqchi says no law permits Britain to stop tankers sailing through international waters.
The tanker was carrying Iran's oil. It's a super tanker with the capacity of 2 million barrels. Because of its high capacity, it was not possible for it to pass through the Suez Canal, so it was passing through the Strait of Gibraltar instead.
Araqchi reiterates Tehran's demand for a swift release of the tanker. He says Iran is consulting the Spanish government over the issue. He denied Britain's claim that the ship was heading to a Syrian port to deliver oil to the war-torn country.
We are in constant contact with the British government. The British ambassador was summoned to the Foreign Ministry on Thursday, and yesterday he came to the Foreign Ministry for a second time. We invited the Spanish ambassador and we are having some consultations with the Spanish government.
Earlier, Iran's Revolutionary Guard threatened to seize a British ship in retaliation. But despite Iran's warning, the Supreme Court in Gibraltar extended the detention of the tanker for another 14 days.
Well, we will bring you the latest developments from the Iran nuclear deal and the situation between the US and Iran soon, later on in the bulletin. For now, let's move on to our second story, which is 7 Moroccan migrants have been killed in an airstrike in Libya. The Moroccan Foreign Affairs Ministry said 8 others were wounded in the strike targeting a migrant camp east of Tripoli. It says Morocco is working with the Libyan authorities for the evacuation of the wounded and repatriation of the bodies. The attack comes 3 days after an airstrike on a detention center in Tripoli, which killed 53 people. In Syria, the death toll from recent coalition airstrikes in the northwestern province of Idlib has risen to 20. 13 children are among those killed. War monitors say the warplanes and helicopters attacked the opposition camps in Mahambul village. Now, following 8 years of civil war, Idlib is the opposition's last major bastion. War monitors say more than 520 civilians have been killed since the coalition ramped up bombardments in the region in April. While the US urges Germany to send troops to northern Syria, where a disagreement over the Idlib safe zone has led to an escalation in clashes. Now, US Special Representative for Syria, James Jeffrey, says Washington wants Germany to partly replace its soldiers in Syria. Washington is pushing for increased military support from other members of the international coalition against ISIS. Last year, US President Donald Trump declared victory against ISIS and ordered the withdrawal of all 2,000 American troops from Syria. However, a small number have remained in the northeast of Syria. Meanwhile, 2-day talks between the Afghan Taliban and government have started in Doha to discuss peace efforts in war-torn Afghanistan. Now, the meeting comes amid a surge in violence in the country. Take a look.
Political figures, civil society activists and other Afghan stakeholders are attending the two-day conference. Women's rights, power sharing with the Taliban, role of regional powers will feature in discussions. German envoy to Afghanistan, Markus Potzel, said participants have unique opportunity to turn violent confrontation into a peaceful debate.
The efforts made by many over the past few years and months, especially the ongoing talks between the United States and the Taliban, have opened up a historic opportunity. But as important as those talks are, they cannot be enough. Dialogue has to turn into a meaningful negotiating process.
Qatar envoy to talks says Doha will continue its efforts for peace in Afghanistan.
Qatar is continuing its efforts as an honest mediator in the Afghan crisis in order to lay the foundations of peace between different parties in Afghanistan and build trust through a comprehensive and permanent ceasefire.
This comes amid separate peace talks between the United States and the Taliban in Qatari capital. U.S. envoy Zalmay Khalilzad says Washington and the Taliban have made progress in talks.
In Afghanistan, 14 people, including 8 soldiers, have been killed in a bomb attack in central Ghazni province. 140 civilians were wounded in the blast. Government officials say a car bomb was detonated near the National Directorate of Security compound. The Taliban have claimed responsibility for the attack, and earlier in the week, 16 people were killed and 100 injured in a car bomb blast in Kabul's diplomatic zone. Well, Iraq has launched a new military operation to secure the western desert leading to the border with Syria. Iraq's military says the operation is aimed at clearing the area of militant sleeper cells. It says the US-led warplanes are taking part in the operation, which is named the Will of Victory. Iraq formally declared victory against ISIS in 2017 after ousting the militants from Mosul. But ISIS sleeper cells have managed to keep up hit and run attacks in desolate parts of Iraq, targeting government checkpoints and local officials. Earlier, 2 police officers were killed in western Baghdad after gunmen attacked a police checkpoint. Saudi coalition forces have intercepted a drone launched by Yemen's Houthi rebels at an airport in the kingdom. Earlier, the rebels claimed drone attacks on military sites at Abha and Jazan airports. Now, refuting Houthi claims, coalition spokesman Turki al-Maliki said the drone was destroyed before it could enter Saudi airspace. The rebels have increased the use of drones to target southern Saudi Arabia. Let's head to the UK. Conservative MP Jeremy Hunt has assured citizens that the election will be fair and he will trust the outcome. This follows British media reports of some Tory members receiving more than one ballot paper. Now, with more than 1,000 members affected, the reports raised concerns of the election's credibility. Party chairman Brandon Lewis assured that people will only be able to vote once, even if they get 2 ballot papers. Ballot papers were sent to 160,000 Conservative Party members who will now choose Britain's next Prime Minister. Now, Prime Minister hopeful Jeremy Hunt says he trusts the Tory members to act responsibly.
I completely trust our Conservative Party members. If there's been any kind of administration error, and I think the Conservative Party have been handling this extremely well, by the way, I know they won't vote twice. However tempting it may be to back Hunt twice, I'm asking them not to, because we want this to be an absolutely fair election, and of course I'm going to trust the result.
Now, Iran has of course said it will exceed its uranium enrichment limit by Monday, which was agreed under the 2015 deal. And for more on this, we have, for the latest developments, we are joined by Mr. Abbas Araqchi, who is an expert on Iranian affairs. First of all, welcome to Indus News, Mr. Abbas, and thank you for your time. So first of all, I want to ask whether it is possible for the European Union to, in fact, play a role in salvaging the deal between Iran and, of course, the signatories.
Well, according to what we have seen in the past and aftermath of the United States withdrawal from the nuclear deal, Europeans have been unable to do anything vis-a-vis this agreement and saving the nuclear deal. But after Iran started to reduce its nuclear commitments under the same deal, we have been seeing some developments from the European side. They have been trying to make some efforts in relation with the financial mechanism, which is called INSTEX, but nothing so far credible or tangible has happened from the European side. According to what has happened in the past, I'm not personally that much optimistic to what Europeans can do against the United States and support Iran against the sanctions of the United States. But French President Emmanuel Macron had a phone conversation last night with the Iranian president. He has promised to do some things within 9 days, and I think he meant to bring or the pave way for the talks or negotiations between Iran and the other remaining members of the nuclear deal. And there are some talks about including the United States in these talks, but I think Iran will accept to have the United States in the talks in case that the Americans lift the sanctions that they have imposed against the country after they withdrew the nuclear deal. So
right
far,
now,
it doesn't seem that
Mr. Abbas, is it correct then that, Iran states that they have the right to suspend parts of the nuclear deal if the Western powers do not live up to their own end of the bargain? Is Iran correct in saying that?
Well, according to the paragraph 26 and as well as the paragraph 36 of the JCPOA, meaning the nuclear deal, either side can suspend or abandon the commitments impartial or fully if the other side doesn't fulfill the commitments that it is supposed to do. So Iran, based on that paragraph of the agreement, has tried to reduce its nuclear commitments, and that is what is called as less for less, meaning Iran will fulfill less commitments for the less commitments that the Europeans have done. But in practice, it has changed to be, from Iranian perspective, everything for nothing, meaning that Iran has kept to all its commitments, but the other side has not been able to fulfill the commitments that they were supposed to do under the nuclear deal. So it is in the framework of the nuclear deal, and Iran says that those measures are meant to save the nuclear deal, because in the 1 year after the US withdrawal, Europeans did nothing, but after Iran started, and that solution or that duration of that situation could be short for short time. But after Iran started to reduce the nuclear commitments, we have been seeing that the other members of the nuclear deal to be active in order to resolve the issues and to save the nuclear deal. And that's why Iran says that these measures and these actions are meant to save the nuclear deal.
Right, so now we know that Iran is in fact willing to keep, decommitting from the deal. What would the US have in this scenario then? I mean, the US has, of course, stated that we will keep applying sanctions on Iran, and Iran has retaliatory, said we will lower our commitments under the deal. What's the US perspective now? What would happen?
Well, let's not forget that this is a process, or the escalation mode that we are seeing in the region vis-a-vis the tankers issues, or let's say in relation with resuming Iranian nuclear activities partially. These are as a result of the actions that the United States did. And while Americans have exited from the nuclear deal, surprisingly, they are asking and demanding Iran to abide to the terms of the deal that they themselves abandoned. So they are talking about imposing sanctions. They might want to bring the Europeans on board in relation with those sanctions, but I can say that no further or no new sanctions are left to be imposed against Iran, and the United States has tried its best using its so-called maximum pressure campaign against the country in order to bring Tehran to the negotiating table that the United States wants to have according to its own conditions. So Americans are trying to use different mechanisms or channels or organizations in order to put pressure on Iran. That's why they have requested for a session of the Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency. They want to have some pressure against Tehran, but as the other members of the nuclear deal in the Board of the Governors of the IAEA have not agreed with the viewpoint of the Americans, I can say that maybe Americans will fail to isolate Iran in this issue, but on the other side, they will be themselves isolated because Europeans say that they are seriously after saving the nuclear deal, and the survival of the JCPOA is very important for them because its collapse can have lots of repercussions for them in terms of the security in Europe, as well as non-proliferation consequences, and many other issues can have its impacts in the region or beyond the region. That's why trying their best to save the deal. But we have been mostly seeing positions from their side. In order to change them into actions, we need to be waiting to see what will happen within coming days or weeks, as French president has promised to do something within 9 days, which he said on yesterday, and we have to be waiting about 8 more days to see what's going to happen.
Right, well, thank you, Mr. Abbas. He was joining us there from Tehran, and he is an expert on Iranian affairs. He said some interesting things, and he said there is no new sanctions that can be applied from the US to Iran. And of course, he said we have to wait to see what happens in the next 9 days, which is what the French President Emmanuel Macron has given the time to see what exactly happens with the deal. And we will keep a close eye on that, so stay tuned for that. For now, let's move on to our next story. Now, polling has ended in Greece's snap elections to elect a new parliament. These are the first national elections in Greece since the voting age was lowered to 17 in 2016. Now, opinion polls suggest the main opposition party, New Democracy, will be forming the next government with an outright majority. In January 2015, the Syriza party leader, Alexis Tsipras, became prime minister on a bid to overturn the 5 years of harsh austerity. Known for his populist rhetoric, Tsipras called snap elections after losing in the European elections in May. Now, a shrinking economy and increasing unemployment are the main concerns for the Greek voters in these elections. A migrant rescue vessel has docked at an Italian port, defying the Interior Minister's Matteo Salvini's orders. It follows the German charity Sea Watch ship, which docked in Italy last week without permission. Alex arrived at Lampedusa carrying 41 migrants as a strong police presence awaited them. Italy has asked the vessel to head to Malta, but the NGO dubbed the 11-hour journey as dangerous. Authorities impounded the ship after migrants were allowed to disembark following a day-long wait. Another rescue ship carrying 65 migrants also arrived in international waters off Lampedusa. But Rome rejected Berlin's call to open up its ports for charity ships. Meanwhile, 4 wildfires have broken out on the Greek island of Evia within 1 week. The World Wildlife Fund has reported an alarming increase in forest fires across Europe as a result of climate change. Several villages were preemptively evacuated as heavy winds and high temperatures struck the island. Firefighters, planes and helicopters were sent in from across the country. Although no property damage was reported, temperatures have surpassed 40 degrees Celsius in Greece during a recent heat wave. Well, 23 people have been injured in an explosion at a shopping center in Florida. 2 of the wounded are critical. Police found ruptured gas lines in the rubble, but it has not been ascertained if a gas leak caused the fire. Part of the building was demolished by the impact. Heavy rain wreaked havoc in China's eastern Fujian province, causing massive floods. Roads in Nanping City transformed into small rivers, trapping locals at home. Officials say 12,000 people in Shunchang were affected by the rain. Firefighters have evacuated some 3,000 people. No casualties have been reported thus far. Well, moving on to the Philippines now, where the killing of a 3-year-old girl in the ongoing anti-drug war has sparked widespread outrage. More in this report.
Over 12,000 Filipinos have been killed in President Rodrigo Duterte's drug war since 2016. 2,555 of the killings have been attributed to the Philippine National Police. The youngest person to get caught up in this carnage was 3-year-old Namid Katiline. The senator who oversaw the drug war's most violent period as police chief has brushed off the child's death as collateral damage.
Rules of engagement, of course, you really need to secure things first so that there will be no collateral damage at all. But like I said, we are in an imperfect world.
Police say Katiline was being used as a human shield by her father, a drug pusher. 20 police officers have been suspended in the wake of the tragic encounter. But the victim's family says they are living in fear of the cops and has rejected the police's version of events.
I'm a bit scared for myself because my enemy is not just anybody. I want to fight, but I ask myself how. As for my security, I'm afraid I may have to leave my children.
On July 4th, Iceland presented a draft resolution to the UN Human Rights Council calling for action against extrajudicial killings in the Philippines. If passed, the Council will request Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet to prepare a report on the human rights situation in the Philippines. The resolution has been backed by 28 countries.
Well, an exhibition showcasing the Sudanese art, which was created and then erased during anti-government protests, has opened at a university in London. Let's take a look.
Sudan is currently recuperating after months of political turmoil. Clashes between the ruling military council and the protesters left dozens dead. Protesters created hundreds of artworks during the sit-in, but military destroyed their depictions during a brutal raid. Some of the artists are still missing.
Unfortunately, after the crackdown on the sit-in on the 3rd of June, most of these pictures have been erased and they're no longer there. And unfortunately, even some of the artists are missing and we don't know where they're about.
The exhibition has been organized to pay tribute to the artists and their ideals.
It just shows the fascinating work that was done, but also many of these paintings reflect the principles of the revolution, including, the key things like peace, freedom, and justice.
Images displayed at the exhibition give people invaluable insight into Sudan's political upheaval.
I'm just here to see it because, unfortunately, it was taken away from us. But you can make art again. You can't bring back the lives that we've lost, but we can bring back the art, and that's all we can do.
People from all parts of London are coming to see the showcase, which immortalized the erased art of Sudanese protesters.
Well, a Chinese craftsman has built a detailed architecture model with 5,200 chopsticks. The 1.3-meter-long ancient building model, designed with the ideas of Suzhou Classic Gardens, is made by Chen Jinji, a wood-carving artist in Putian. With a height of 45 centimeters, the two-tier model presents details including stairs, a screen wall, different types of rooms, corridors, and a pavilion. It is named Kyushan Yunju, which means a residence on an autumn mountain. Every window and door of the model can open and close like real ones. The whole structure is very stable, but there is no nail or screw in it. Chen Jinji said the materials he used are only chopsticks and glue. The video of Chen's model has over 18 million clicks on a Chinese video sharing app, Douyin. Now, the Yakutia region in Russia is known as one of the coldest places on Earth, but it is also famous for its natural resources, including oil, gas, and diamonds.
Life in Yakutia is not easy. It has harsh 9-month-long winters when temperatures can drop to below 30 degrees Celsius. With the ground frozen most of the year, people prefer mining to farming.
Behind me, we can see the already developed pipe. We can also see the yellowish diamond sand deposits. which we will also work on. At the moment, the depth of the pipe is around 375 meters. In the future, it will be 450 meters deep.
Она сейчас составляет 375 метров.
Yakutia hosts 11 out of 12 of the Russian Alrosa Group's diamond mines. The conglomerate is the world's largest producer of rough carrots. Alrosa also has a reputation for secrecy, and this is one of the few times it has agreed to demonstrate its work.
It is a unique mine. In general, mineral deposits exist in only one form. Here, we are lucky to have both diamond sands and ore.
Alrosa hopes these mines will remain exploitable until 2041. The most productive quarry, Bochovinskaya, is currently only 130 meters deep. The company wishes to dig it down to 580 meters.
Diamonds are already there. We are just extracting them from the ore. They are already locked in the ore.
Alrosa is often accused of harming Yakutia's environment, but it is the main source of employment in the area. In April, the company said it would inject $13 million into the region over a period of 5 years to improve the quality of drinking water.
Now, the Taipei Zoo threw a birthday party for its 6-year-old giant panda, Yuanzai. A number of fans wished her a happy birthday. Yuanzai was the first baby of a couple presented as a goodwill gift to Taiwan by the Chinese mainland. As tourists crowded the panda enclosure, Yuanzai munched on a heart-shaped ice cake scaled up with carrots, pineapples and sugarcane slices. She occasionally looked up to spare a smile for her guests.